Hi, my name is Eleanor Tatum, and I'm the publisher and editor-in-chief of the New York Amsterdam News. The coronavirus crisis has brought serious distress to local economies and advertising along with them. The New York Amsterdam News has partnered with the Local Media Association during this unprecedented crisis. Help us continue our important work in chronicling the life of Black New Yorkers, and consider making a donation to the COVID-19 Local News Fund today. Go to givebutter.com/Amsterdam News. Again, that is givebutter.com/Amsterdam News. Thank you and stay safe.
It's Thursday, May 21st, and welcome to the New York Amsterdam News Podcast. I'm Cyril Josh Barker. We continue our coverage of the COVID-19 outbreak with my guest, actor Vereen, and Care for the Homeless Executive Director, George Nashak. They're going to be speaking with me about how the coronavirus pandemic is impacting the homeless. Well, according to officials, city agency workers have gone around the city, including the subways, to engage with homeless New Yorkers and help them go into shelter or a hospital if necessary. The city reports that thousands of homeless people are now residing in shelters or commercial hotel settings while maintaining social distancing. Actor Vereen is the ambassador for the organization Care for the Homeless, and he's helping out with his latest project, Virtual Vereen and Friends, an online benefit event supporting Care for the Homeless's COVID-19 Impact Fund. And we welcome you to this episode of our podcast, and we're so happy to have legendary Tony Award-winning actor Vereen on this episode to talk about that very project I was just mentioning. And he's going to be joined with us by CFH Executive Director George Nashak, who's going to be giving us some insight on how COVID-19 is impacting the homeless community. If you've seen in the paper and online, we've been doing a few stories about this. This is actually a very important issue that's near and dear to us. While we're being all told to social distance and be safe, if you're homeless, that situation is very, very different. And we're going to get into that here on this episode of the podcast. Well, it is Thursday and the paper did come out today, and I have several stories that I want to go over with you. First, our front page story, which is titled COVID Cop Chaos, which is about the recent rally that took place at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn over police brutality during social distancing enforcement. Several activist groups came together to voice their outrage on how Black people are being treated by the NYPD. Another story we have is actually by me. It's about COVID-19 testing in the Black community and the new numbers that are showing that some parts of the city with high Black and Latino populations have COVID-19 infection rates that are well over 40%. And elected officials and community leaders are wanting answers and resolutions to that problem. Lastly, we have our arts and entertainment section, which we discussed the annual Dance Africa event that would be occurring this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, if it was not COVID-19, but they're doing it virtually this year due to that. And we'll give you a rundown about how the event is going to go this year, where you can find the performances online, and what's going to happen with that. So for all these stories and more, we definitely urge you to pick up the paper safely on newsstands, or you can check them out online at amsterdamnews.com. Well, my guest today is legendary actor Vereen, who's going to be speaking with me about his work as the ambassador for the organization Care for the Homeless. The organization's executive director, George Nashak, is also with me to talk about homelessness during the COVID-19 pandemic. Welcome to the podcast, gentlemen. How are you?
Very well. Thank you, Josh.
Mr. Vereen, I definitely have to ask you first and foremost, why are you doing this? This is such a wonderful cause and a great cause to be an ambassador for, to representing, to be helping out with. Why did you decide to help with this?
First of all, I was impressed with George, and I met George, and he and Ron and all the brilliant people I met at the Care for the Homeless. I've been along this track a very long time. I've even played in a movie with Richard Gere where I lived on the street for a while and investigating my character. Mm-hmm. But as I say, living on the street and being on the street are two different things. But I did not know about this organization and what they were actually doing. I know that, that the healthcare situation for the homeless is hit and miss as far as I understood as a layperson. But once I became associated with Care for the Homeless, I realized there was a whole component that I didn't know about. And I figured if I don't know about it, then how many others in the city of New York do not know that they exist. So when I was invited to the dinner on Fifth Avenue about this, and I said, I'd love to be a part of this, at least to bring some sort of recognition and focus on the fact that this need is here. And especially during now the pandemic, to know that our homeless people are being taken care of and there's a facility, there is an actual organization that embraces them.
Wonderful. And Mr. Nashak, I definitely want to get some insight on you on just what the situation is when it comes to homelessness and COVID-19. We've recently seen that the social workers have been going into the subway system and on the streets to try and get people places to stay. Can you tell us about what's going on with homelessness when it comes to COVID-19?
Sure. And please call me George, Josh.
Oh, sure.
We were, of course, kind of like the rest of the world, by surprise with how quickly this pandemic grew. And we operates 2 homeless shelters in New York City and 26 healthcare centers for homeless folks. And so immediately it was very clear that it was going to have a pretty significant impact on our operations. We, from the very first moment, made a decision that we were going to remain open and we were going to remain available to our patients and to our residents. We haven't downsized at all. In fact, since the beginning of the COVID pandemic, we've onboarded 12 additional healthcare staff to help us meet the demand. From the healthcare perspective, one of the things that concerned us is that, as you know, people have been self-quarantining.
Yes.
The doctors asked people to remain at home. That means people can't come into health centers to get their basic health care. And so we quickly stood up a telemedicine program and we trained our healthcare providers in the use of telemedicine. And so we've been checking in with people through telemedicine when, in non-emergency situations, and just making certain that we're okay. The majority of the folks we serve are people living with chronic healthcare conditions. And so it's meant a lot to us and hopefully to our patients as well that we've been able to be in touch with them, have a visual or an audio connection with that person, check in to see how they're doing, make certain they're up to date on their medications, get a new prescription, and we've hopefully helped keep people healthy. We've also been one of the first providers in the city to roll out a COVID-19 testing program to people living in shelter. And so we're very proud of that. And that's a project that's in flight right now. And we're rolling it out to our own residents first, and then we'll expand beyond that.
Okay.
This is wonderful. I don't want to make light of what's happening with this pandemic. It is very serious. It is something to be taken very, very seriously. But just listen to what George has to say and how they have positioned themselves with this onset of this COVID-19 to protect those people who are homeless. And I'm thinking, I'm listening to this, I'm going, my God, we could have protected the whole city had they followed our lead. It's amazing. So that's why it's important that we get the word out there about care for the homeless, because I like to say that they are leading the charge on this whole pandemic as far as I'm concerned.
And so you actually have an event, the virtual Vereen and Friends, the online benefit that's going to be happening.
The VV.
The VV. Yeah. Please tell us about that. Who's going to be participating and how is that going to work?
I asked my friends to come on and support us. The list is still growing. So far, we've got Brian Stokes Mitchell, we've got Wayne Brady, we've got David Copperfield, we've got Clint Holmes, we've got Cheetah Rivera. I'm using names that I haven't got contact with yet, but I know they're my friends, and they will come aboard that evening. It's only an hour, but my main thrust is to inform people of what Care for the Homeless does and to get backing funding. We, the people, must fund ourselves at times, especially times like these. We sit back and say, well, government's got their hands full.
Right.
So to take care of our own. As Care for the Homeless, George, they do this. They care for their own, our own. They're not their own, our family. We are a family in this. And New York's talking about we're in this together. Let's be in it together and let us get the lead of Care for the Homeless and come support us and allow this organization to be the forefront runner in healing our city.
So just so that your listeners have the details, so the event, Virtual Vereen and Friends, is going to be taking place on Thursday, June 18th at 6 p.m. This is the first virtual fundraiser that we have done as an organization. And so if your listeners want to have the privilege of seeing Ken Vereen, a Broadway legend, perform, it's June 18th, 6 p.m. And I'll give you our website. So that's how people can connect to the event and sign up to participate. It's careforthehomeless.org. Careforthehomeless, one word.org. Your listeners can go to that website, learn a lot about the work that we're doing, and also be connected to this event and to other opportunities to participate with the staff of Care for the Homeless in the work that we're doing.
Okay. And how
and please ask your listeners to please donate.
Okay.
Please check in and support us, because supporting us, you're supporting yourselves. As I often say, by the grace of God go you or I, or our loved ones. And to know that there's an organization such as Care for the Homeless in place, then we've got nothing to worry about. Our backs are covered.
Wonderful. And so can you give us a little more detail rather, about how people are able to donate? How are donations being taken? I know they're doing online, but what's the process for that?
Sure. So if folks go to our website, careforthehomeless.org, they'll be able to, first of all, get a lot of information about our history. We've been doing this work for 35 years. And they can also learn about some of the work that we're doing to respond to the COVID crisis. They'll be able to sign up and buy tickets to the virtual Vereen event. But there's also opportunities there to make a donation if folks should choose to do that. We will be very grateful for any donations that come in, and we will use them well to expand access to healthcare for homeless people in New York City.
Okay. Wonderful. And George, what I wanted to know is that, COVID-19 has exposed so many disparities. It has magnified so many of the issues that we're having in this country, in this city. One of the things that I keep hearing about is that, there's long-term solutions that are needed. We need permanent housing for the homeless. What are some of the solutions here when it comes to the homeless now that we're seeing? I know for me, I ride the train at least once a week, and I see some homelessness, in people that are out. But, obviously the shelter system is taking quite a few people. But what are the long-term solutions here that we need?
That's a great question, Josh. Thanks for asking it. So, first of all, there's a lot that we don't know about COVID. The science is not completely clear yet. There's a lot of questions that are still open. But one fact about COVID has become very clear very quickly. COVID did not create racial and income disparities in terms of to healthcare, but boy, how efficient in exposing them. And so we now have, and by the way, Care for the Homeless has been advocating for increasing access to low-income communities for 35 years. Tragically, it's taken an epidemic of this proportion to kind of demonstrate that we need to do better. And so one of the things that we're doing at Care for the Homeless is we're establishing community-based health centers that are in underserved communities and will reach out to children and adults who are living in homeless shelters, in drop-in centers, in permanent supportive housing, and provide them with health care at the quality that you and I get or better. If I could summarize the mission of Care for the Homeless in one sentence, it's that we believe that people experiencing homelessness should get health care at the quality that you and I get or better. And so we're establishing this network of community-based health centers to reduce the barriers to high-quality health care. We're going to do our best to place these centers in proximity to permanent housing, one of the solutions that you mentioned. It's really integrating these services together. It's housing, social services, and healthcare. In that formula is really the solution to the problem that we're talking about.
And Mr. Vereen, for the virtual Vereen event, what can people expect when they log on? I should say, because we can't do it. It's going to be online. What should people expect on for the event?
Well, first of all, the doors open at 5:50.
Okay.
I expect you all to come rushing to the doors.
But Ben, you have to bring your own drink.
Oh,
exactly. And your own dinner. But what you can expect is an evening of people who really are concerned about the people. Mm-hmm. Artists who are concerned about the people. People loving people. There'll be songs, yes, all the things that you'll expect. But unfortunately, it won't be touching because we're virtual.
Right.
But you'll get artists who care. And I think that's what we need now more than anything.
And let me ask you, we're starting to see a lot of celebrities in every aspect of entertainment and sports, well-known people really stepping up to the plate. Why do you think it's so important for our entertainers and our celebrities to be a part of causes like this?
It's interesting you should ask that question. I've been on the phone with American for the Arts, speaking with a lot of fellow artists throughout the United States. And the most interesting thing that strikes me about times like these, times when the country or the world is going through a crisis, the one thing you always lean on that's the arts. Mm-hmm. The arts are always there to carry us through. And at a time like this, we step up to the plate. And I hope that that people understand it and get it now, that the arts are important. I hope the government gets it now, that the arts are important to our society, to our civilization, in order for us to look to a better day, to give us hope, to give us dreams of a better day. That's what the arts does. We will get through this. They say together, but the arts will lead the way. Care for the homeless will lead the way.
Wonderful, wonderful words. George, what I wanted to ask you is one aspect of homelessness that when we're talking about homeless people in America, here in New York City, we often have the conversation about homeless children. Can you tell us what that's looking like and the situation when it comes to homeless children?
Sure. We've all school kids in New York City have had a very abbreviated school year, for example, but kids in more affluent families and in more affluent communities have been able to connect to their schools through technology, through iPads and through Zoom. Kids living in homeless shelters don't have that kind of access necessarily. And so, the fear that we have as advocates for homeless people and advocates for homeless kids is that a crisis like COVID sets those kids back yet another 2 or 3 steps. And that's tragic. We know that kids experience bad outcomes later in life when they're exposed to lots of negative stimulus when they're children. And so a lot of the work that we do is reach into shelters, trying to get the kids connected to our healthcare, trying to make certain that they are immunized appropriately. I'll tell you a brief story that sort of summarizes this. We had a young man, 4 years old. His name was Dominic. And we had been doing vision screening in the shelter where Dominic lived with his family. And we did a vision screening for Dominic, and it turned out that he had a pretty significant visual problem. Now, the fact that Dominic was 4 years old is critical to the story. At 5, Dominic is going to go to school, right? Mm-hmm. And so, right off the bat, he's going to be treated like a second-class citizen because he's going into the school from a homeless shelter.
Right.
And to add insult to injury, he wouldn't have been able to see the board. This is so healthcare and the services that we provide really are designed to try to help kids move up that ladder to be able to perform and to experience life at the level of their peers.
One question I want to ask go ahead.
Can I add something?
Sure.
I had the good privilege of going to some of the shelters of care for the homeless. And I met, did you answer your question about the young people there who were living in the shelters? And one thing that broke my heart, as a matter of fact, was they said, we don't like it when people look at us like we're leopards. like we got some sort of disease.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this young girl said, she said to me, she said, I'm not going to let my situation determine my future.
Mm.
Wow. How powerful is that?
Yeah.
From a child living in a homeless shelter, the voice of a universe. We will not let our present situation determine our future. We learn from the homeless. We learn from a child in a homeless shelter.
Right.
That's all I want to add.
No, that's wonderful, wonderful. And that does bring me to my next question about, and this is to both of you, you know, living here in New York City and even in other cities, because we have listeners who listen to us from all over, we see homeless people in our normal lives. I know that, you know, here in New York, we see them on the subway. We see homeless people, you know, on our way to work, coming home from work, just when we're out, even in social settings. I mean, it's a problem that you can't not see living in a large city. Even in a smaller city, it's not something that's, that you can't get away from. Just as regular people, you know, I'm just a regular guy, and, you know, people that I know, regular people, that what can we do to improve the situation for homeless people, you know, in this country? What can regular folks do?
Fix the system. The system is broke. Fix the system. Mother Earth has cried out, and she has you stop. She's having to stop and look at our situation and the way we have been treating not only the earth, not only the wonderful sky, but our fellow human beings. Our system is broke. That's why we see people who are homeless. The system is broke. These people need jobs. They don't need a handout. They need a hand up. Fix the system.
You know, Josh, one of the things, I've been doing this work a long time, and one of the things that is causing me to have some concern is that there seems to be a level of fatigue about the problem of homelessness. People feel it's incurable and it can't be solved, and nothing could be further from the truth. And a lot of the work that we do at Care for the Homeless is presenting to folks examples of the solutions that we're implementing. And I got to say, this is one of the areas where Ben has been such an amazing friend to the organization. You know, lots of organizations have celebrity partners, and that's a wonderful institution in the United States. But Ben has rolled up his sleeves and really learned about this problem. And he has intuitively understood that we need to talk about solutions to homelessness and undermine that despair that it's an unsolvable problem. You know, go to the website of Care for the Homeless or another homeless service agency and learn about the work that's being done. Learn about the solutions. People can volunteer and help make people's lives better. People who have financial resources can donate resources towards these solutions. Homelessness is a solvable problem, and the moment of despair that we're in right now, where when you read the newspaper, you would think that there isn't anything positive happening, is just not true. I'll give you an example. We have run a shelter for 200 homeless women in the Bronx for 10 years. We have placed 1,100 women into permanent housing. 1,100 women into permanent housing over those 11 years. 100 women or thereabouts a year. And that's really what we're about, finding those solutions, implementing those solutions, and making certain that we don't despair and that we don't assume that this is an unsolvable problem.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's beautiful, George.
Yeah.
You know, and here's another point. You see what George just said about the 1,100 or that we placed into permanent housings? You won't read about that on the front page of the New York Times or on the front page of Amsterdam News. We don't read about that as a headlines, how exciting this good news is that somebody has recovered back into our system and it contributes to the system for a better day for all of us.
All right.
I'm proud to be a part of Care for the Homeless because the work that they do for all of us. I'm not just talking about homeless people. I'm talking about all of us as a race of people, as a civilization, as a social conscious people. Here is a healing component, and we must embrace it. We must hold it up in the light so others can see it and run to it in time of need.
All right. Well, Lastly, I just want you all to please repeat the information for our podcast listeners about the event. And also where can they do, or where can they go rather to do ongoing help, because this fundraiser is not just a one-time thing. I'm sure you all would like something ongoing. So please tell us again the day of the event and how people can log on and the best way to donate.
Sure. Thank you. It's Thursday, June 18th at 6 p.m. And the best way to get access to the event and also to learn more about Care for the Homeless and how your listeners can help is to go to our website, careforthehomeless.org, careforthehomeless, one word.org. There's a wealth of information on the website, information about Ben, some stories about Ben, and he told you about his visits to the shelter. You'll see some of that on the website. But the event information is on the website, plus all the information about our history, the work that we do, and how your listeners can help us. careforthehomeless.org.
All right. Well, gentlemen, listen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Mr. Vereen, you're such a wonderful person. You do wonderful work.
Thank you, Josh.
And George, you are just as equally as wonderful because of the work that you're doing to help our homeless community. Again, this is a problem that we see face to face every single day. And so to know that there are people out there who are working to make the situation better is just absolutely wonderful. So thank you both.
Thank you,
pleasure. Thank you. And also, I want to say to your listeners, that please stay safe. Know I'm praying for you, and that they say that we'll get through this. No, we're through this. It's behind us. As long as we look at it as a problem, it will remain. As long as you look at the solution, it will disappear. And that's what Care for the Homeless does. It looks at the solution rather than the problem. So we as a people, we must look to the solution, look to the heavens from which cometh our strength, and hold together and get there. Get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That concludes this week's podcast. You can pick up the latest edition of the New York Amsterdam News on newsstands and get updates online at amsterdamnews.com. You can also keep up with us on Facebook at NY Amsterdam News and follow us on Twitter at NYAmNews. I'm Cyril Josh Barker. Thanks for listening.
Hi, my name is Eleanor Tatum, and I'm the publisher and editor-in-chief of the New York Amsterdam News. The coronavirus crisis has brought serious distress to local economies and advertising along with them. The New York Amsterdam News has partnered with the Local Media Association during this unprecedented crisis. Help us continue our important work in chronicling the life of Black New Yorkers, and consider making a donation to the COVID-19 Local News Fund today. Go to givebutter.com/Amsterdam News. Again, that is GIVEBUTTER.com/Amsterdam News. Thank you and stay safe.